They say destiny knocks only once. But what if destiny doesn't knock? What if it collapses at your doorstep? Hungry, broken, and unrecognizable. This is the story of a young woman who saved a stranger on a rainy night, only to discover that the man she rescued had the power to change her world forever. Sometimes love arrives quietly. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a problem. And sometimes it arrives too late. If you are new to this channel, like and subscribe and tell us where you are watching it from. The rain began without warning. Not the gentle kind. Not the romantic drizzle lovers walk through smiling. This was a furious storm. Thunder cracked across the sky like the earth itself was splitting open. Wind tore through the narrow streets of Silvergate District, sending plastic chairs tumbling and market umbrellas flying like broken birds. Inside a small roadside bookstore, Amara Cole was counting coins. $23.50. That was her profit for the day. She sighed and leaned back in her wooden chair. The shop smelled of old paper and damp wood. Books lined the crooked shelves. Novels nobody asked for anymore. Self-help guides people pretended to read. Children's fairy tales covered in dust. Amara loved books. Books didn't leave. Books didn't lie. Books didn't disappear when things became difficult. People did. The wind rattled her door violently. She stood up to secure it. And that's when she saw him. Cross the street. Collapse. At first she thought it was a pile of trash bags tossed by the storm. But then the shape moved. Man. Face down in the rain. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. For a second, just one, she hesitated. The city was not kind. Helping strangers could be dangerous. Stories like this never ended well. Thunder roared again. The man didn't move. Amara grabbed her umbrella and ran. The rain soaked her instantly. Cold water slid down her neck into her clothes, but she didn't stop. She knelt beside him. "Hey! Can you hear me?" No response. She turned him gently. His face was pale. Too pale. Blood, faint but real, traced from his temple down to his jaw, mixing with rainwater. He wasn't homeless. That much was obvious. Even drenched, his clothes were expensive. His watch alone probably cost more than her yearly rent. His breathing was shallow. He was alive. Okay, she whispered to herself, steadying her shaking hands. She couldn't leave him. She wouldn't. It took everything in her to drag him across the street and into her bookstore. The bell above the door chimed wildly as they stumbled inside. She locked the door immediately. No witnesses. No complications. Just her, and this stranger. She laid him on the small couch in the back of the shop. Rainwater pooled onto her wooden floor. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a clean cloth and pressed it gently against his wound. "Please don't die in my bookstore," she muttered nervously. He groaned. Her breath caught. His eyes fluttered open, dark, sharp, confused. For a split second, fear flashed through his expression. Then something else. Recognition. Relief. "Where?" His voice was rough. "Trained." "You're safe," she said quickly. "You collapsed outside. You hit your head." He tried to sit up. She pushed him back down gently. "Don't be dramatic. You nearly became street decoration." Despite everything, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Humor. Good sign." "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was controlled. Even injured, there was something commanding about him. She noticed the scar near his wrist. Surgical. Intentional. This man had lived through something. The lights flickered. Storm still raging. He closed his eyes briefly as if gathering strength. "Did anyone follow me?" he asked suddenly. Amara froze. "Follow you?" His gaze sharpened. Measured. Calculating. And in that moment she knew something. This wasn't random. This wasn't just a man caught in a storm. This was a man running from something. And now, whatever it was, might have found its way into her quiet little bookstore. Side tires screeched. A black SUV slowed down across the street. Amara's stomach dropped. The stranger's jaw tightened. "They're early," he murmured. Her pulse exploded. Who is they? He looked at her. Not as a stranger. Not as a victim. But as someone about to pull her into something far bigger than she ever asked for. If you help me, he said quietly, your life won't stay small. The SUV doors opened. Men stepped out. Rain pouring. Searching. Amara's heart pounded louder than the thunder. She had always wanted adventure. She had always wanted her life to mean something more than counting coins in a dying bookstore. But this was not the kind of story she thought she'd be living. She looked at the stranger. His eyes held urgency. But not cruelty. Not danger. Just truth. The men outside began knocking on nearby doors. Hard. Impatient. Getting closer. Amara swallowed. Then she did the most dangerous thing she had ever done. She turned off the lights. And locked the back room. Darkness swallowed the bookstore. Only the storm spoke now. Rain battered the windows. Thunder rolled like distant drums of war. Amara stood still behind the counter, her breath shallow, her pulse loud in her ears. The men outside were moving closer. Boots splashed through puddles. A knock echoed against the neighboring tailor shop. Open up. Not polite. Not friendly. Commanding. Behind her, on the worn couch between stacked cartons of unsold novels, the stranger struggled to sit upright. You need to hide, he said quietly. She shot him a look. You're the one bleeding. Another knock. Closer now. Her bookstore door trembled as someone tested the handle. Who are they? She whispered. He hesitated. Not because he didn't know. Because he was deciding how much truth she deserved. Private security, he finally said. Not police. That was worse. Yours, she asked. His silence answered her. The door handle rattled harder this time. Amara's stomach tightened. Why would a man run from his own security? Outside, a flashlight beam slid across her window. Low. Searching. They think I've been taken, he murmured. Have you? His eyes met hers in the darkness. No. Another bang against the door. Sir. We know you're nearby. The word echoed in her mind. Amara crouched beside him. Even in the dim light, she could see how different he looked now. The vulnerability from before was gone. In its place was composure. Authority. You're not just some rich man, are you? She whispered. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. No. Bootsteps approached the door. Heavy knock. Open this door immediately. Amara's heart thudded violently. If she opened it, they would take him. If she didn't, they might break in. And somehow she knew this man didn't want to be found. Not like this. She stood slowly. Stay quiet, she said. He watched her carefully, measuring her courage. She walked to the door and turned on the front light, but not the back ones. Let them see normal. Let them see harmless. She unlocked it halfway and cracked it open just enough. 3 men stood there, drenched but sharp. Black suits, clear earpieces, controlled eyes. Ma'am, the tallest one said. We're looking for someone. During a storm, she replied calmly. Romantic. He didn't smile. A man may have entered this area. He's injured. We need to ensure his safety. Safety. She leaned casually against the doorframe. I've been inside all evening. Just me and my books. The guard studied her face. Then glanced past her shoulder. Shop. Stack shelves. Space. He couldn't see the back room. You're sure no one came in? He pressed. Amara shrugged lightly. If someone had, I'd probably ask them to buy something before collapsing. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Thunder cracked again, louder. The guard stepped back. If you see anything unusual, call this number. He handed her a card. She took it. They lingered one more second, then returned to their vehicle. The SUV drove off slowly. Not defeated, just delayed. Amara shut the door and locked it firmly. The silence afterward felt heavier than the noise. He turned. The stranger was watching her with an expression she couldn't immediately read. You lied without hesitation, he said quietly. You were bleeding on my couch, she replied. I committed to the situation. For the first time he laughed. Real. She crossed her arms. Now talk. He exhaled slowly, like a man preparing to remove armor. My name is Daniel Vale. The name meant nothing to her. He studied her face, searching for recognition. There was none. Interesting. I own Vale Dynamics. Still nothing. He blinked once. You've never heard of it. I run a bookstore, she said flatly. Not a stock exchange. For a moment he seemed almost relieved. Vale Dynamics handles international tech infrastructure, satellite communications, security systems, government contracts. He stared. You're a defense contractor. Among other things. That explained the security. That explained the urgency. What were you running from? She asked. He hesitated. Control. She frowned. My board doesn't like unpredictability. Neither do my investors. I walked out of a meeting tonight. You walked out, she repeated. Yes. Why? His jaw tightened slightly. Because they want to launch something I don't believe is ready. Something dangerous. Something powerful. He didn't elaborate. But the weight in his voice was enough. And collapsing in the street? She asked. He looked almost embarrassed. I hadn't eaten. I'd been arguing for hours. Head started spinning. Despite everything, she let out a small, incredulous sound. You almost died from stress. Apparently. She walked to the small kettle and poured hot water into 2 chipped mugs. Tea, she said, handing him one. Because billionaires also need basic survival skills. He accepted it carefully. You're not afraid of me, he observed. He shrugged. You look like a man who forgot to take care of himself. Not a villain. A strange quiet passed between them. Outside, the storm began to soften. Rain easing into steady rhythm. Why help me? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around her shop. These books saved me, she said softly. When my father's business failed. When creditors took our house. When we lost everything. His eyes sharpened slightly. She continued. I learned something. Falling doesn't make you weak. Staying down does. He held her gaze. And for the first time Daniel Vale looked seen. You don't know what you've involved yourself in tonight, he said quietly. She leaned back in her chair. I know a man almost died in front of my shop. He watched her for a long moment. Then said something that changed the air in the room. They won't stop looking. Her heartbeat skipped. For you. For what I walked away from. Silence again. The weight of implication settling between them. You can still hand me over, he added. Call that number. You'll be thanked. Probably rewarded. She picked up the card the guard had given her. Looked at it. Then tore it cleanly in half. Daniel's breath slowed. You really don't think small, do you? He murmured. She met his eyes. Maybe I'm tired of small. Outside, in the distance, another vehicle engine hummed. Not the SUV. Something else. Slower. Deliberate. Daniel's expression shifted instantly. Alert. Focused. They didn't leave, he whispered. The lights inside the bookstore flickered again. Then went out completely. Total darkness. The engine outside stopped. Car doors opened. Multiple. Not 3 this time. More. Amara's pulse roared in her ears. Daniel stood carefully despite the pain in his head. You need to decide right now, he said quietly. Decide what? Whether you're helping a man who challenged powerful people, or stepping away before it becomes dangerous. Footsteps approached. Not knocking this time. Testing windows. Checking locks. Amara felt fear rising like cold water in her chest. But beneath the fear, something else. Something wild. Something awake. She looked at Daniel Vale, the man who wasn't supposed to fall, and realized the storm outside wasn't the real beginning. The real storm had just stepped onto her doorstep. She swallowed, then reached for his hand. Back door, she whispered. Outside, someone tried the front handle again. Harder. Inside, between shelves of forgotten stories, a new one was being written. And neither of them would ever live quietly again. The back door opened into a narrow alley that smelled of wet concrete and forgotten deliveries. Amara stepped out first, the drizzle cooling her overheated skin. The storm had weakened, but the air still hummed with tension, as if the sky itself were watching. Behind her, Daniel eased the door shut without a sound. Inside the bookstore, something crashed violently. They had forced the front entrance. Her pulse spiked. "They're not your usual security," she whispered. "No," Daniel replied evenly. "They're the kind who don't ask twice." Another crash echoed through the building. Male voices, controlled, methodical. A thin beam of light sliced through the cracks in the wooden panels. Amara grabbed Daniel's hand and pulled him deeper into the alley. "You're bleeding again," she muttered, noticing the dark stain spreading at his temple. "I've had worse meetings," he said dryly. Even now, hunted and injured. His voice carried calm authority. The alley split ahead. "Left leads to the main road," she whispered quickly. "Right goes through the old warehouse district." "Which direction has fewer cameras?" he asked without hesitation. She shot him a look. "You assume I monitor cameras. You run a business in a city that watches everything," he said. "Everyone monitors something." She didn't argue. Right it was. They moved fast through puddles and broken pavement, past shuttered buildings and rusted gates. The warehouse district had once been the industrial heart of the city. Now it was skeletal and forgotten, replaced elsewhere by glass towers and polished boardrooms. Footsteps echoed behind them. Not close, but closing. Daniel faltered. His balance slipped for half a second. Amara caught him. "You're not invincible," she said quietly. "I never claimed to be. You implied it." A faint, exhausted smirk crossed his face before disappearing. Engines drifted into the district from two different directions. They were being boxed in. Daniel scanned the dark row of buildings. "There," he said. An old freight entrance stood slightly ajar. The warehouse inside was dry, hollow, and unlit. They slipped inside and pulled the heavy door almost closed. Darkness swallowed them whole. Dust clung to the air. Crates were stacked unevenly against the walls. Broken conveyor belts rested like fossilized remains of industry long gone. Only their breathing broke the silence. Amara leaned against a concrete pillar. "What exactly did you walk away from tonight?" she asked in a tight whisper. Daniel wiped rainwater and blood from his temple. "A deployment vote." "For what?" He hesitated only briefly. "A satellite system capable of monitoring entire regions in real time." "That already exists," she replied. "Not like this." His voice dropped lower. "This one doesn't just observe. It predicts." He stilled. "Predicts what?" "Behavior patterns. Civil unrest. Economic shifts, political volatility, threat probability." Her stomach tightened. "You built a system to predict people." "I built infrastructure to prevent crisis response delays," he corrected quietly. "The board wants to turn it into permanent surveillance." Footsteps passed outside the warehouse entrance. Flashlights moved like restless eyes. "They want total oversight," Daniel continued. "No gaps. No uncertainty. And you refused." "Yes." She studied him carefully. "You could have resigned." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because if I step away, someone else approves it." That landed heavily. "So you stayed to block it." "I tried. And now?" He looked toward the thin seam of light near the door. "Now they're questioning my stability." "You collapsed from exhaustion. They'll call it erratic behavior." A quiet, bitter laugh escaped her. Corporate betrayal disguised as concern. Daniel glanced at her, surprised. "You grasped that quickly." "My father trusted investors who said they were helping," she said softly. "They dismantled his company piece by piece while smiling. Daniel's jaw tightened. So you know what power looks like. I know what it looks like when it pretends to protect you. Car door slammed outside. Closer. Flashlight beams skimmed across the warehouse windows. Daniel stepped slightly in front of her. Not romantic. Protective. If they find us, they won't harm you, he said quietly. You're not the target. That's reassuring, she replied dryly. You can still walk away. Through the men circling the building. He had no answer. A loud metallic clang echoed from deeper inside the warehouse. Someone had entered from another access point. Amara's breath caught. Daniel's hand brushed her arm gently. Stay still. Bootsteps echoed slowly across concrete. Measured. Confident. A flashlight beam cut through the dark, sweeping across stacked crates and rusted machinery. Closer. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would betray them. The beam passed the pillar beside them. Moved away. Then returned. Now fixed directly on them. Sir! A voice called calmly from the shadows. Not hostile. Not frantic. Just controlled. Daniel straightened. You found me, he said evenly. A man stepped forward. No visible earpiece. No uniform. Just a tailored coat and composed posture. Mr. Vale, he said. The board is concerned. Daniel gave a thin smile. Concerned for returns, perhaps. The man ignored the remark. We cannot have you disappearing before a decisive vote. It wasn't ready. It was profitable. Not ethical. The man's gaze flicked briefly to Amara. And who is this? Someone uninvolved, Daniel answered quickly. The man studied her. She held his gaze. Brave, he observed. I prefer alive, she replied. A faint shift in his expression, then gone. The vote has been postponed, he said to Daniel. Temporarily. For now, Daniel replied. You will return voluntarily. That depends. Your position is not secure. Daniel stepped forward slightly. I don't need the position. The man smiled faintly. Everyone needs position. Side engines restarted. More vehicles. More movement. Amara felt clarity settle inside her. This wasn't a disagreement. It was a power struggle wrapped in polite language. Daniel glanced toward her. You shouldn't be part of this. But I am, she said quietly. The man clasped his hands behind his back. You have 24 hours, Mr. Vale. For what? To reconsider. And if I don't? The man's eyes shifted briefly to Amara. Then others will. He turned and walked out. The flashlights vanished. Engines faded into the distance. Silence returned. But it was no longer ordinary silence. It was the silence of warning. Daniel exhaled slowly. They won't stop. Amara folded her arms. Good. He looked at her. You're afraid. Yes, she admitted. But I'm tired of watching powerful people make decisions for everyone else. She stepped closer. Maybe someone should finally say no. He studied her face in the dim light. Something shifted between them. Not romance. Recognition. You barely know me, he said. I know enough. Outside, city lights shimmered against wet pavement. The storm had passed. But a larger one had begun. Daniel Vale had 24 hours. To surrender. Or to stand. And somehow, a bookstore owner now stood at the center of that choice. The warehouse felt colder after the men left. Not physically. Strategically. The kind of cold that lingers when you realize you've just been measured. And marked. Daniel stood still for a long moment, listening to the fading engines until even the echo dissolved into the night. Amara watched him carefully. The calm expression was back. But now she knew it wasn't natural ease. It was discipline. They gave you a deadline, she said quietly. Yes. What happens in 24 hours? Daniel exhaled slowly. Either I return and align with the board, or they move to replace me. Can they? They can attempt to. She frowned. You own the company. I own shares. So do they. Power, she realized, was never singular. It was layered. Outside, rainwater dripped from broken gutters. Inside, dust floated through thin shafts of streetlight cutting across cracked windows. What would replacing you mean? She asked. It would mean the system launches without resistance. And the predicting machine, she pressed. It becomes mandatory infrastructure. She crossed her arms. Mandatory for who? Everyone. The word settled heavily between them. Daniel walked slowly toward a stack of wooden crates and sat down. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. They've been preparing for this for months, he said. I delayed it 3 times. Raised compliance concerns, security reviews, ethical audits. And they ignored you. They listened. Then reframed. She gave a humorless smile. That's what they do. He studied her. You're not surprised. My father used to say, she began softly, if someone can't beat your argument, they change the room. Daniel's eyes sharpened slightly. That's exactly what they're doing. A distant siren wailed somewhere beyond the warehouse district. Not for them. Just the city breathing. What's the worst-case scenario? She asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. They announce I'm stepping down for health reasons. And they appoint someone aligned with their timeline. And you. I lose influence. She stepped closer. You don't sound afraid of losing the title. I'm not afraid of losing the title, he said calmly. I'm afraid of losing the ability to slow them down. There it was. Not ego. Responsibility. She sat on an overturned crate across from him. Why build something that powerful in the first place? She asked. His jaw tightened slightly. Because I believed in its original purpose. And that was to prevent chaos, to detect infrastructure failures before they happened, to identify economic collapse before people lost everything. She held his gaze. Like your father. He blinked. How did you? You talk like someone who watched something fall. Silence. Then he nodded once. My father's company collapsed during a financial downturn. No warning. No safeguards. Thousands lost jobs. He never recovered. Amara felt something shift in her chest. So you built a system to stop collapse, she said softly. Yes. And now they want to use it to control collapse. He nodded. The irony was almost poetic. Outside, wind rattled loose metal sheets. 24 hours, she murmured. That's not much time. No. He looked at her carefully. You shouldn't be involved any further. She raised an eyebrow. That ship sailed when your board kicked down my bookstore door. A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. You could still walk away, he said. I can distance you from this. Can you? She asked gently. He didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. If they see me as leverage, he began. They won't, she interrupted. You made it clear I'm irrelevant. You're not irrelevant, he said quickly. The words hung there. Unplanned. Honest. Her pulse shifted. I mean to them, he clarified quietly. She nodded, but she heard what he hadn't meant to say. Silence stretched again. Then she stood abruptly. We need a plan. Daniel looked up. A plan? Yes. For what? For the next 24 hours. He studied her like she'd just said something unexpected. I thought you'd tell me to return. To compromise. And let them use your creation however they want. That's how survival works. She shook her head. That's how surrender works. He leaned back slightly, watching her think. You're assuming I can stop them, he said. You've already slowed them, she replied. That means they need you. He didn't deny it. So leverage it, she continued. Make the delay public. His eyes narrowed slightly. They don't want publicity around internal votes. Exactly. He was quiet, thinking. You're suggesting transparency, he said slowly. I'm suggesting sunlight, she replied. If people know what's coming, It's harder to slide it through quietly. He stood. You're asking me to challenge my own board publicly. I'm asking you to decide what matters more, she said evenly. Position or principle? The word principle landed heavily. Daniel walked a few steps away, staring at the far wall of the warehouse. 24 hours. If he stayed silent, he could preserve stability. If he spoke, he could fracture alliances. He turned back toward her. You understand that if I do this, the fight becomes permanent. She met his gaze. It already is. Long pause. Then something in his posture shifted. Not resignation. Decision. They expect me to return quietly, he said. To reconsider. And will you? Yes, he answered calmly. Her stomach dropped slightly. Wait. I will return, he continued. But not quietly. She exhaled slowly. Now she understood. You'll speak. I'll request an emergency ethics review before the full board, he said. And I'll record it. And if they block it, then I escalate to shareholders. The risk in his voice was unmistakable. You could lose everything, she said. He gave a small, almost peaceful smile. Everything isn't the same as what matters. That landed deeper than he probably intended. She looked at him carefully. You've already decided, she realized. No, he said softly. I was waiting. For what? For someone to remind me why I built it in the first place. Silence. Not heavy this time. Steady. Outside, the last of the storm clouds drifted away from the city skyline. The night felt different now. Less hunted. More chosen. Daniel checked his watch. 18 hours, he said quietly. Amara folded her arms. Then we don't waste them. He stepped closer to her. Once I walk back in there, there's no pretending anymore. You stopped pretending when you walked out, she replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The warehouse no longer felt like hiding. Felt like a threshold. Come with me tomorrow, he said suddenly. She blinked. To the meeting. Yes. They won't allow it. They don't have to know who you are. She held his gaze. And why would you want me there? His answer came without hesitation. Because you see clearly. The simplicity of it disarmed her. Outside, the city lights shimmered faintly against wet pavement. The storm had passed. But the real test was waiting at sunrise. Daniel Vale had 24 hours to decide whether to preserve power or redefine it. And Amara Cole, bookstore owner of a quiet street, was about to walk into a room where decisions shaped the future. The room where decisions echo. Morning arrived without ceremony. No storm. No thunder. Just a pale sky stretching over a city that had no idea what might change before sunset. Amara stood in front of her small bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of a simple navy blouse. She had chosen it carefully. Not flashy. Not timid. Just honest. Her bookstore keys rested on the table beside her phone. For a brief moment, she wondered if she should open the shop as usual. Pretend last night had been imagination. Return to stacking novels and counting coins. But something inside her had shifted. Some doors, once opened, do not close quietly. A sleek black car stopped outside her apartment at exactly 8:15 a.m. No dramatic convoy. No visible security. Daniel stepped out himself. He looked composed again. Controlled. The faint bruise at his temple was barely visible beneath carefully styled hair. His suit was tailored, precise, almost armor-like. Yet his eyes carried the same quiet intensity from the warehouse. You don't look like someone who didn't sleep, she said as she approached. I've had practice, he replied. Is that comforting? No. He opened the passenger door for her. As the car pulled into traffic, the city moved normally around them. People hurried to work. Buses stopped. Coffee shops opened. Ordinary life. Meanwhile, somewhere ahead, a decision was waiting. How many board members? She asked. 12, he said. 7 in favor of immediate launch. 3 undecided. 2 aligned with me. So you're outnumbered? Yes. And you still plan to challenge them publicly? Yes. There was no hesitation now. The headquarters of Vale Dynamics rose from the financial district like polished certainty. Glass walls. Reflective surfaces. A building designed to look invincible. Inside everything was quiet efficiency. Staff greeted Daniel respectfully. Some with warmth. Some with caution. They knew something was happening. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than it should have. Once we enter, Daniel said softly, stay near the back. Observe. Don't react. I don't plan on starting a rebellion, she replied. A faint smile touched his lips. The boardroom doors opened. Long table. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City skyline behind it like a painted backdrop. 12 seats. 11 already filled. Conversation stopped when Daniel entered. Not loud silence. Measured silence. The man from the warehouse stood near the head of the table. Mr. Vale, he said smoothly. We're glad you chose to attend. Daniel didn't sit immediately. I never intended not to, he replied calmly. His eyes scanned the room. Investors. Directors. Faces trained to remain unreadable. He finally took his seat. Amara stood near the back wall, unnoticed by most. The meeting began. The postponed vote, one board member said, was intended to give our CEO time to reconsider his concerns. Daniel folded his hands on the table. My concerns have not changed. A faint ripple of irritation crossed the room. Another member leaned forward. The predictive network has cleared regulatory review. Regulatory, Daniel replied evenly, is not the same as ethical. The infrastructure will stabilize markets. It will monitor them, Daniel corrected. Monitoring ensures security. Monitoring without limitation ensures control. The words landed cleanly. No shouting. No theatrics. Just clarity. The man at the head of the table spoke again. Our shareholders expect decisive leadership. They expect sustainable leadership, Daniel countered. You are risking destabilization. I am preventing escalation. Murmurs began. Subtle. Controlled. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small device on the table. A recording indicator blinked softly. The room stilled. This discussion, Daniel said calmly, is now documented. A board member frowned. That is highly irregular. So is deploying infrastructure capable of predictive mass surveillance without transparent oversight. Silence. Amara watched carefully. This was not anger. This was chess. The man at the head of the table narrowed his eyes. You're forcing our hand. No, Daniel replied. I'm opening it. He leaned forward slightly. I propose a 12-month independent ethics review before deployment. Third-party oversight. Public disclosure of predictive limitations. That will delay profit margins, someone argued. It will protect public trust, Daniel said. A long pause followed. One of the undecided members cleared his throat. Public backlash, he said slowly, would be catastrophic if this system were misunderstood. It won't be misunderstood, Daniel replied. It will be questioned. That is the difference. The room shifted. Subtle, but real. Another undecided member spoke. If we move forward quietly and information leaks. It will, Daniel said evenly. The man at the head of the table watched him closely. You're willing to risk your position over this? Yes. And if we vote to replace you? Daniel didn't flinch. Then I address shareholders directly. The air thickened. There it was. The unspoken truth. He had leverage. He had credibility. Replacing him would fracture investor confidence. The board knew it. Silence stretched. Finally, one of the previously aligned members spoke. I second the proposal for independent review. Another followed. And I. The balance shifted. 7 in favor had become 5. 5 uncertain had become 3. Votes were called. Measured. Careful. When the final count was spoken, The deployment was suspended. 12-month ethics review approved. Public transparency clause added. Daniel leaned back slowly. Not triumphant. Not relieved. Just steady. The man at the head of the table offered a tight smile. You've complicated our timeline. I've protected our future, Daniel replied. The meeting adjourned. Board members exited in small clusters, already calculating next moves. Power never disappears. Adapt. Daniel remained seated for a moment after the room emptied. Then he stood and walked toward Amara. It's done, he said quietly. For now, she replied. Yes. They stepped toward the window overlooking the city. Traffic moved below. Unaware. Unchanged. Yet something subtle had shifted. You didn't save the world, she said softly. No. But you slowed something dangerous. Yes. He turned toward her. I wouldn't have done it. She raised an eyebrow. You were already going to. I needed clarity, he said. She held his gaze. And now the real work begins. She smiled faintly. Back to your bookstore after this. He studied her carefully. If you'll have me. She pretended to consider it. I charge for tea. I'll pay. They stood there for a quiet moment, not as CEO and witness, not as power and resistance. Just two people who had stepped into a storm and chosen not to look away. Outside, sunlight broke through lingering clouds. The city moved forward. And somewhere between a bookstore and a boardroom, a different kind of leadership had begun. Do well to like and subscribe for the next story.